All right, we're gonna run through a 5-0. Let's get started here. I know this guy's name. I don't really know what he's on off the top of my head. So we end up on this 6. So some sort of post or Maverick style build. We're missing obviously an Entomb here. It's pretty straightforward. So basically here, my intuition is I want to optimally find a second land and obviously an Entomb. So that's good. We don't want to get Wastelanded out of the game, etc. If we can fade a Wasteland, then we have Daze, Ponder, Dark Root. Okay, so we're on Cloud Post. This is one of our best matchups. They don't have any relevant interaction other than maybe a crop rotation, depending on how they're built. Let's see here. Why is this not? There we go. Alright, so we need to Ponder here. Alright, so the game is over. Not a lot to talk about. I'm just gonna fast forward. I fast forward way too fast, but we did the thing. It's pretty straightforward. Not. All right, so game 2. We're on the draw. Cloud Post. As you can see, I do move into Doomsday because we don't want to be super extra vulnerable to Graveyard Hate or Leyline, which they sometimes run. So this is not a phenomenal hand, but it's good in case it's a version that's running lock pieces, which I do like to have that available. So we are just checking what's going on. There was a Green Sun, which is more relevant to us in the face of Collector Oof. As you can see here, I don't really care about crop rotation anymore. Do be mindful of Mikikoro, as that card can ruin your day pretty quickly. All I'm moving through is just trying to find a Dark Ritual so we can end the game on the spot without passing the turn. But that may or may not come to fruition, so let's see what happens here. So we got a Dark Ritual, and we just build it. Like, the one thing to be mindful is with this crop rotation here, we don't want to... so let's look at the pile that I built. Oh, he just scoops on the spot. So just to kind of run through this here, with this crop rotation, if he's running the list with Mikikoro, we have to build a pile that can end the game with one card in deck. So instead of a predict pile, I generally run towards a preordained pile here. Or we could be patient because we have a whole lot of interaction in hand. I don't like to do that because if something goes totally sideways and it's not expected, we end up screwed. And we know that he's had 2 draw steps, so he's spent the Misty Rainforest Expedition and the Cloud Post, so he has 1 unknown in hand. The odds of that being a Mindbreak Trap are pretty low. And the odds of him having crop rotation are 100%. So I lean towards playing around crop rotation more than Mindbreak Trap here. All right, we'll move on to round 2. All right, match 2 here. I do have no idea what this guy is on, so let's just play a couple turns, see what we end up on here. So this is not a phenomenal hand. Like, generally a non-Entomb hand, I generally will mull a little bit for, but with Double Force and Dark Ritual and a cantrip, it's not one that I can reasonably put back. I'm not excited about it, but I have a pretty high standard for opening hands. So we're against some sort of Delver deck. Snow-covered island to start off makes me wonder if it's just straight blue-red. Probably, which means we have to end the game quickly. So let's look at this Ponder. Too slow, sorry. So we kept the Brainstorm, which is pretty obvious. So he knows, by playing this out, he knows we're against some sort of combo deck, which gives him a little bit of more information that I would really like to. But I can't reasonably, again. So we're just digging here. We're trying to end the game on the spot. It's really what it comes down to. I'd really like to... I think this game ended... Okay, that's not really relevant. I can't remember how I closed this game out. But really, we need an Entomb or a Thoughtseize here. He's at 20, which makes this Emrakul not phenomenal. But my thought here is I do have to go for it. And the reason for that is we want to clear his board. And we're left with 3 forces in hand. It's not great, but the game, the situation was likely unlikely to get better for us. I am super not thrilled with playing it out like that. I generally will not want to do that, but what we end up with is a situation where we can start digging for more pieces and try to make things happen. He's rebuilt pretty quickly, so I think we're going to draw like a god here if I remember correctly. And just totally get there. Or this might have gone 3 games, I'm not sure. So that's pretty good. I do keep the days. And really, we just want to end the game. So that'll work. I think that was a misclick going back. But I'm not sure. Because what we have now is the capability to play around days. But I think that was a misclick and I should have been in the game a turn earlier. So we got lucky there. So take a look at sideboarding. We do move into Doomsday, or at least I do, against this particular deck. This is a shaky keep. I'm keeping it on the strength of Force of Will, Days, and Doomsday itself. We lucked into drawing the basic here. But, okay, so it is Rug. And if we can luck out here... okay, so my thought here is, again, it's not getting better. And we can protect our land with the days. So this ends up being... let's look at this pile really quick. What was the 4th card? I can't go back. So an LED pile, because our mana is super tight here. If you look at what we have here, it makes us vulnerable. So it must be a cavern. It makes us a little vulnerable to surgical here, but they generally have more wastelands than surgicals. So given the choice between which one I'm going to lose to, it's going to be surgical. And we need to fade double flip plus bolt here. There's a lot, like this particular spot is kind of rough for us. I force this because I want to give them 0 options. It's pretty straightforward. I don't love it, but I just want to limit as much as I can in terms of what's going on. And they scooped it there. In retrospect, I probably would have played that slightly differently, but the thing is, against Delver, I don't like double Street Wraith piles, so we're just trying to end the game as quickly as possible. All right, match 3, we hit Walker-Rock. I think he normally plays like ninjas. I'm not sure. I know he's a, maybe not, maybe it's just Delver, but I know he's a big name. All right, so... these are the 2 most important cards, Dark Ritual and Tomb, obviously. Force of Will is nice to have. So yeah, it's just Delver. I think he's on Rug. I'm not going to lie, I'm a little tired of Rug. I do the end of turn Brainstorm here. So the reason for that is mana is our constraint, and we don't guarantee a second piece. So if we want to play around 2 pieces of interaction if we can here. So you'll see here, I set it up so we have Force plus Days. This is a pretty excellent setup, and there's no reason not to jam here. Obviously. So obviously he's going to force. And what's cool here is we can daze to get our land drop back, so we have mana floating after GRISELBRAND comes into play. Minor thing. Obviously we're probably going to draw into a land anyways. So, alright, so we jam here. And we just try to put things together. I think this guy makes us play it out. It's pretty easy to get there. Let's see here. Yeah, we've got Thoughtseize, Shallow Grave. So we just Emrakul here. Yeah, so he scoops, and we move on to game 2. Game 2, let's go. Okay, so real quick before we keep going, this hand, it's so shaky on the mana. I don't love this hand, but we had mulliganed obviously, and we had Doomsday plus Force in hand. It's one that I just don't feel comfortable shipping at this point. But against Delver, this hand is probably not getting there. Although drawing the days is super nice. So if we can find a ritual off this, it actually might get there. So let's see what happens. So one thought that's worth keeping in mind, although as this deck gets more popular, is sometimes I will not cycle this blind, as I don't want to tip off the opponent as to what sideboard plan we went with. The reason to cycle this here is if we did find ritual there, we would have been in really good shape. But the end of turn brainstorm is probably where I go here. Yeah. So it's not phenomenal. And if I remember correctly on this particular game, I could be wrong. So pause. Go look at that hand. He's on 3 dazes in a wasteland. It's just like we just kind of we fizzle here, and this is what our deck does sometimes. So he's gonna get this guy in play. We'll play a turn or two more, and yeah, we pack it in because this may have been premature. Like if we found a ritual, we did have a lot of backup, but with this in play plus 3 dazes, I what it comes down to is I value my time. Let's see here, we're on the play, and let's take a look at this hand. All we're missing to have is a ritual. And as you can see, I very often don't respect Wasteland. It's a lot of the time it's just not worth it. And there we go, it's right there on me. Oof. So, why did we do that? Because we're just not getting there otherwise, and we have to basically hope that, because if we wait any longer, we're dead. He's gonna have more turns to look at things, and we're just never going to resolve anything. So, thinking about this here, we have nothing to work with. We're gonna go this shell deck pile. The thought being, it forces him to have another wasteland, and he has no clock currently. So that's kind of where I end up. We have a little bit of interaction and the ability to dig around our pile and reset it up if he does surgical. If I didn't have this brainstorm here, I would be hesitant to do this because a surgical then just completely screws us. But with the brainstorm, it's not the worst thing as long as we find a land. Okay, so what we're going to do here is actually basically say, go ahead and wasteland it because we have 2 lands here. Notice the snow-covered island ended up in there. And what this does is it says, do you want to wasteland me and also have no clock? And as you can see, we do end up a little bit tight on here. But this already reduced our pile size by 1. And as you can see, he sideboarded for the incorrect thing. So we basically just have to fade a flip into a bolt into another bolt, which... And even a bolt we could Flusterstorm, so I just don't hate the position that we're in. And we go game over. All right, so this next match is actually against Rich Cali. So it may play back some of our chat. I'm not sure. So I'm all immediately assuming he's on Rug Delver is how I play this match. Yeah, I have the chat outside of the frame, so apologies, but yeah, we talked for quite a bit. So this is obviously everything we need. We just need protection. There is an argument to be made for jamming in the blind here, but Rich Cali knows what I'm on, almost certainly. And I'm going to play this as if he's on Rug Delver to start. So as you can see, I fetched the basic for the cantrip. The idea is turn 2. We can play around days and hopefully have our own days. But TBD. So we find Force of Will, which is one that I don't want to put away. We just need to find a blue card now, which is a lot easier than finding protection. Because any cantrip will do. So he just plays Snow Covered Basic. And I'm like, that still could be Rug running the Singleton Basic. And what happens here is actually kind of a middling play on my part. I get a little too antsy. But his turn 2. Alright, so immediately I'm like, Prismatic Vista into Island. This is not Rug Delver. And I see Counterbalance. So 2 options here. I could have just forced this and gone on my turn, but that makes Force of Negation live. And that's kind of a problem. So if I force, pass back, go on my turn, I set myself up for a whole lot of possible failure cases. So the idea here is I actually just pop off here to protect my own combo, have force live, and just draw a ton of cards. So the idea being now he has to have force of will to protect this. We don't have to worry about counterbalance, and now we can force the counterbalance and not have to worry. And now we have 7 more to find what we need. So this is not optimal, but what it did is it played around the worst case scenarios, because these counterbalance decks tend to run 8 forces. And we want to just turn 4 of them off if we can. So we're going to draw 7 more. And we have all the pieces. We're in pretty good shape. So counterintuitively, I wanted to go off there. And you'll see what happens here. That's why we went off on their turn. And all we need to do is daze. Game's over. All right, game 2. So obviously on Doomsday, it makes our... I mean, we don't need to talk about why. It's pretty straightforward. And all we're trying to do is find as much fucking counteraction as we can. We want to be ready to play against several copies of force and or deal with counterbalance. If he goes turn 2 counterbalance, days obviously helps us a lot there. So notice, I want to pause here. I did not go off there with just straight into Doomsday. I burned a cantrip to make this Flusterstorm and this Daze live if we can. And you'll see how it plays out. So there's the force. He pitches Teferi, which is good to know about because Teferi eats Sheldock Isle alive. So now we're going to try to get this to resolve. If he has like a Flusterstorm, we're screwed. But basically anything else, and we're pretty okay. He's obviously playing around, or able to play around Daze here. So if he has a second force, not great for us, but... Okay, so we're against a control deck. With Teferi, and 1 Teferi's gone. Most of them run 1 to 2 copies. Sometimes 3, I guess. So we don't have to worry too much about it. So what I'm doing here, and we'll play through it, is building a pile that's built around Sheldock. Again, per the earlier round, I'm less inclined to do that if I don't have a brainstorm to reset it up if I need to, but I do. So he's probably going to surgical here, yep, which is fine. And now we have the cavern. And what we do here... Oh, I did put a force in the pile, by the way, because I wanted to just... We had 1 blank slot in there. And we wanted to make sure that we had the ability to have force. And this is perfect here. You'll see what happens. He forces the brainstorm. We're able to force back. Fight over it. Try to find the Sheldock. We have 3 hits. We hit it. We Sheldock here. He needs to find Teferi, and even if he does, we have a Preordain and an Oracle left in our deck. And the game's over here. So, that was in the match. All right, this is the last match, and I actually thought this was a pretty cool one. So game one is actually quite lacking in interestingness. So let's see here. So I don't think there's much to say here other than it's unreasonable not to jam here. Like, it legit unreasonable. If it's a Delver deck, their dazes are turned off. It forces them to have double force in their opener. And we just go ham here. And the fact that they didn't even force is real nice. So, it doesn't take a lot to get there, but we do have to go the post-combat win. Because we didn't hit another Lotus Petal. If we had hit another Lotus Petal... Actually, no, we needed to hit a Ritual and or 2 Lotus Petals. So we loop for a while. We do the process. The reason I fetched there is just the deck then. It's actually mildly relevant when you're dealing with this many draws. So as you can see, we drew double here, so it's easy enough to get children going. And then we just literally go to my looping video. You'll see what happens. We hardcast Emrakul. The game ends. So we saw literal nothing from our opponent here. Which means that in game 2... we do go to the Doomsday plan. What I'm thinking here, right off the bat, and I don't know why I got this read, but I for some reason, pretty early on, I got a show and tell read, but I didn't want to leave the fatties in case I was wrong. Maybe I've played him before. I can't remember what my intuition said, but this game's pretty cool. So we do want both of these. We're just going to keep going. And by the time they do this, well, not here. There's some spot here where it makes it clear that it is blue-green Omni to me. So we're just going around a little bit. We don't mind any of those cards, but we don't need them. We have 3 dazes. I don't really want to fight for it. So I'm playing this out here because I want to end of turn this. The idea is I want to set up my deck. And I'm just going to hit play and let it play out for a second. And I'll pause right here. So, the reason that I did this is just in case my read is wrong and they are on a Rug Delver build. I want to have a black source available. So what I'm looking for here is something that allows me to get a Dark Ritual and Doomsday close together. I know that's a little, you know, I'm wishing for a lot, but it's really what I'm looking for. And we take a lot of life loss here. Brainstorm plus Doomsday is not bad. I can't remember, but I wouldn't be surprised if I kept here. Yep. Okay, so we put back... I wish there was an undo. I think it was Cabal Therapy. Then Ponder, Force, Doomsday, Brainstorm. So we draw the Brainstorm. We do this. And I don't care about the lands. So I do draw this, and I keep the Therapy on top as a protection mechanism. I probably could have saved a turn by keeping the Therapy instead of the Doomsday and had that ready to go. So what I do here is I hardcast Daze. The reason for this is we know we want to resolve this next turn. If this is blue-green Omni, as I'm kind of intuiting that it is, this means that they have to burn a Veil now, making Daze live. Or they have to let this go. So let's see here. They let it go, which leaves me with my read of one of two things. Either they have a Veil plus a Force, or a Flusterstorm. So we start with this and see what happens. He fetches. So it's a Veil. And what we want to do here is go ahead and float black for Doomsday and daze it. So that means the only card we really need to worry about at this point is Force of Will. So I named Force of Will. You can't see the box over here. There is a Force of Will in hand, so Veil plus Force of Will. And now he's going to be left with Brainstorm, Emrakul, and Omni. So if he top decks, exactly a Show and Tell, we're screwed. If he top decks a land and then can Brainstorm into the Show and Tell, we're screwed. But those are the only two scenarios that are really particularly bad. Otherwise, we are in okay shape. So now we just hardcast Doomsday. And look at our life total. So we have to be mindful of that. So we cannot do a 3 Street Wraith pile. So we're going to go down to 5. This puts us at 1 to make this pile. Our Force of Will is always going to be dead here if we do a pile like this. But what I really want to do against Show and Tell is put them in a position where if we fade one more draw step, we are live. And it gets a little more complicated here in a minute. At least if this is the match I think of. So we're basically putting ourselves in a position where 1 life is the difference. And it does kind of come up, I think. Yep. So we have to go 1 more turn. Kind of stinks that this happened because I wasn't thinking about quad when I built this pile. Or I could have easily just put a preordain in there or something. But there's our graveyard hate that we love to see. So we're not under any real duress, by the way. I have no idea. I think this might be a replay error, actually, because I would never put Cavern anywhere except for the very bottom. There's literally no reason for this. And I've had a few replay errors happen where it just doesn't make sense. So it's going to be like, I cycled Cavern of Souls or something like that. But I promise you that's a Street Wraith there. I guess, I don't know. Either I misclicked or, but that's not a pile that would actually happen. I think the game is actually bugging out. So yeah, this didn't happen. I've had a few replays do this. I don't know what's going on, but obviously this is just going to be Wizard. We're going to cycle into Edge of Autumn at 1 life, play Oracle. Like, it's just, nothing's happening here. So it's aired out. But yeah, this was a pretty cool match. Making sure we can convert those dazes into something was basically the difference between a win and a loss here. Not playing around this almost cost me the game as well.